Conflict is surprisingly important for relationships. I think if couples really understood how important it is, they wouldn't be so afraid of it. From time to time, I meet couples who either totally avoid conflict or they might have a belief that they should never fight. But what's so interesting is that their relationship is so fragile and so brittle precisely because they've never worked together on real issues, the kind of issues that actually force a couple to forge something real and solid. And when you pull back the curtain on these seemingly perfect marriages, the ones that never fight, they are often falling apart on the inside for this reason, because they've never had real conversations about hard things. And I'm not talking about conflict that is steeped in hostility or contempt. I mean, the type of conflict where you have the courage to sit down honestly and vulnerably and ask, how do we really move forward and work out our differences here?
Those are difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part to realize is conflict is guaranteed because we're all with different people with different perspectives and different interpretations. Most of us choose a person who's wildly different from ourselves because, well, honestly, we're attracted to those differences and they represent some mystery and something different that we didn't grow up with and something that feels exciting and new. And we enjoy the feeling of being with a person who's really much different than ourselves, who's also excited about joining with us and creating this relationship. And all of that is part of this lust and this passion that's in the early stage of our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you move in together and you start forging this life together. And suddenly it's like, wait a damn minute. What is the matter with you?
Yeah.
Why are you putting your toothbrush here? You're doing life the wrong way. And it's not inherently wrong. It's just different than how we were raised and how it was modeled for us. And this creates tension.
And this is a necessary tension that exists in living with someone who is by design and by choice, as Robert reminded me earlier,
by choice, yeah,
different from you. And this tension is actually what pushes us to grow a psychological muscle that we wouldn't have otherwise had. It pushes us to have deeper understanding and love and to make room for another human being in our orbit that thinks and sees things differently from us. And that is the tension of marriage, which is very good for our human development and it's good for our soul's development. And I think that is why conflict is such a necessary and valuable component in relationships.
And I think you want to just remember what Charla said, because that's hard for people to take in. Conflict is a necessary and valuable component in our relationships.
It is.
But there is one element to conflict that you absolutely cannot be without. And if you try, you will fail and your relationship will fail. And according to John Gottman's research, you'll likely end up even divorced. Mm-hmm. It is probably the single most important relationship skill that you must learn for safety and security in your relationship. And it is called repair.
Repair.
Right. So that is why we're starting a new mini series today on repair. And yes, we talk about repair often in the show. And because honestly, in our relationship, without repair, we wouldn't be here today. We would likely be divorced ourselves. And that's why repair is one of our favorite topics to discuss. So today we're going to speak about the importance of repair. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about giving and receiving repair attempts, along with how to give and receive meaningful apologies. So let's dive into it.
All right. So this probably sounds like a wild assertion. But
okay, I'm ready. Go.
No relationship has ever been broken by conflict itself. What actually ends relationships is when people keep hurting each other and they don't take accountability for the ways in which they are hurting each other. And then they fail to repair the damage that they're doing by hurting each other. So conflict itself is not the problem. And frankly, this is not entirely your fault, okay? Your relationship isn't failing because there's a lack of love. Most likely it's failing because of a lack of skills.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody taught us relationship skills. Most of our parents didn't model healthy conflict and relationship and repair skills.
Nope.
Therefore, most of us really, really suck at it. We suck at conflict. We suck at repair.
Yeah, we don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So think about it. How many of us, just raise your hand. Like if you're driving, you raise half of your hand, right? How many of us saw adults who could openly express their perspective while also letting another person do the same thing without either one of them flying off the handle or getting defensive?
Not me.
Not many. How many of us watched our parents express their feelings and their needs openly and with vulnerability?
Mm-mm.
No. How many of us witnessed real presence, real empathy, and negotiation with compromise that led to win-win solutions?
Nope.
No one I know, not very many.
Yep. Instead, a lot of us saw one parent who was intrusive and lashing out, dumping all of their dysregulation onto the other parent, while that other one appeased or withdrew or maybe settled into a one down position. Some of us saw two dysregulated parents that were just exploding at each other all the time. Or maybe you had two parents who never fought at all, but they also didn't model anything healthy because their relationship was actually quite brittle.
Yeah. And it's rare to grow up in a home where parents brought their concerns to the table, worked through them like adults, and then repaired those little ruptures along the way. And even rarer that those skills were passed on to you. I get it. You don't want to repeat what you saw growing up, but that doesn't mean that you can prevent conflict from happening. So a little side story. A number of years before I met Charla, there was a gal named Melissa. Melissa's parents had a very tumultuous relationship, even when I was in the house. Melissa broke up with me because she said we disagreed on too many things. I'm sure, and we were young, and I'm sure that she learned those skills in her next set of relationships, because the only thing she did was she traded our disagreements for another set of disagreements.
Yep.
Okay. Here's a fact that surprises a lot of people. Healthy relationships don't actually have less conflict. In fact, sometimes they have more. Why? Because healthy, secure couples know how to navigate conflict. They've learned that it's better to have small conversations more often than to let things build up into one gigantic explosion that just shreds the entire relationship and causes hurt.
And obviously those huge ruptures, those big explosions that you're talking about, they're a lot harder to repair than smaller ruptures. And yes, it can still be done. You can still repair the larger ruptures, but at that point, there's usually so much resentment and a loss of trust and betrayal that sometimes maybe one or both parties don't even want to repair. So let's start shifting our mindset, shall we? Let's replace some of our old and faulty belief systems with new empowering belief systems around this topic of conflict and repair. And the first new belief that I invite you to adopt is this: that conflict is not only inevitable, it is actually normal, it's necessary, and it's beneficial. Because without conflict, we would never forge that deep, mature love that we all desire.
And that we all need.
We do. And we need that connection.
Yeah. So Dr. John Gottman found that successful couples didn't just argue. Most of them argue about the same things over and over. In fact, even in the best of marriages, 69% of their disagreements are perpetual. That means these couples, when they would come back and do the John Gottman study, were having the same types of arguments over the same topic year after year, decade after decade.
Like parenting or money or whatever the topic was, just kept surfacing.
And we have our favorite perpetual disagreements
usually
as well.
Parenting.
Yeah. These couples, these successful couples, they didn't just avoid conflict. They just got really good at having small conversations and doing lots of repairs. So it doesn't matter who you marry, you will have conflict. You might think that if I married someone else, I wouldn't have these conflicts, but guess what? You'll just switch partners and you'll just get a different set of conflicts. Yep. You're never going to find a person who gives you a life without conflict, or, well, you shouldn't.
Yeah, you don't want
conflict. Helps you grow your relationship.
So what is repair?
Oh.
Repair is the process of addressing the conflict and restoring the connection between two people. That's really it. It's all about restoring connection, getting us back into harmony. Now, you might ask, when would be the best time to do this repair? Well, all the time is a good time to restore connection. A repair can happen in the first minute of a disagreement. It can happen in the middle of a disagreement, right at the end of a disagreement, or even years down the road if there's still resentment that's involved in that disagreement.
A really helpful question to keep in the back of your mind during conflict is, what can I do right now that would help restore connection between us and keep the conversation moving forward? Mm-hmm. So again, what can I do? Not what can they do? What can you do? Not what can we do? But what can I do right now to restore connection? For example, if you're in the middle of a disagreement, you could maybe pause and just say, hey, I'm going to go get a glass of water. Do you want one as well?
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or you could interject and say a kind word in the middle of a disagreement, like, hey, I just want to pause for a second. And I just want to say, I know this is a hard conversation, but I really appreciate you staying in it with me and trying to work this out.
Or maybe if your words come out a little sharp, which tends to happen with me, just own your crap, take accountability and say, hey, like, look, I screwed that up. That was a little sharp. Can I try that again? Can you just erase the last 3 seconds of me talking and then just, rewrite it with this and reframe it a little bit better. Use your wise mind.
And if you are on the receiving end of someone who has just maybe used some harsh language with you, rather than getting reactive yourself, say, hey, you know what? That hurt a little bit. Could you reframe that? Or could you say something to make things safer for me so that we can continue to talk about this? Because I want to stay in this with you. Even that is actually a repair attempt because you're inviting the other person to come back into connection with you instead of probably the habitual thing, which would be to get reactive yourself. So just these things that Robert and I just shared, as you hear them, do you feel how all of these things just lower the temperature? They keep and maintain the connection or return us back to connection, even if you're having a really hard conversation.
I remember when we were having a difficult conversation, and it had probably been years in the making. And I think it was when you were really just talking about your perceptions of just our faith and your beliefs. And you were afraid really for a long time to talk to me about that, mostly because I hadn't created a safe space. But I remember when we were finally having that conversation, you sort of interjecting that same thing in the middle. You're like, look, I really appreciate how you're hanging in here with me on this conversation. I know it's difficult for you. And on the inside of my brain, I'm just screaming like run, all those things, but I'm still just trying to be the adult and just trying to, help you maintain that vulnerability and that connection. And that allowed us to have a difficult conversation that had been years in the making. And just your encouragement in that, I think, was really helpful for me. So I just want to thank you again for that. That was fun.
I love that. I love that. It's a great example of just, repairing can happen at any moment, whether it's right at the beginning of a conversation, midway through, later on. Like there's never a wrong time to make a repair.
Yeah. All right. So this brings us to the next belief that we want to have you consider adopting. Repairing early and often always leads to the best outcomes. So repair early, repair often.
Yeah, because obviously it's far better to de-escalate early on with, like Robert said, that glass of water or a kind word than to continue to let the temperature rise and rise until it reaches a boiling point where you have these massive explosions. So John Gottman's research was very clear on this. When couples failed to repair or they failed to accept a repair that their partner was attempting to make, their marriage was at a much higher risk of divorce. And that's not what we want. We don't get into this relationship to end up in that statistic.
There's a researcher named Ed Tronick, and he's best known for his studies on infants and their caregivers. And what his research shows us is really, really cool. All relationships have this natural rhythm. And every relationship, whether it's between a baby and their caregiver or between two adult partners, moves through the same cycle: harmony, disharmony, and repair. Harmony is when you feel connected, you feel aligned, and you feel in sync. Disharmony is when a rupture happens and you feel disconnected. You feel like something's a little bit off. And oftentimes you can't tell what it is. And repair is a process of restoring that connection and getting back on track, back in harmony.
Harmony, disharmony, repair. Harmony, disharmony, repair. Connection. There's that loss of connection. And then repair again. So you feel closeness, and then there's this rupture that happens, and then you return back to that closeness through repair. And this cycle happens over and over and over again. And this is important because we don't learn this. We aren't taught that this is normal. I certainly never learned that this was normal. Most of us carry around this faulty belief that a good relationship should be all about harmony all of the time. And that is just not realistic. And because we don't talk about this as a normal part of relationships, couples tend to get really disillusioned, really dissatisfied, and really confused when disharmony shows up in their relationship.
There's this really cool short video on YouTube that I recommend that you watch. And if you haven't seen it, it's called The Still Face Experiment with Ed Tronick. And in just about 2 minutes, you can watch this entire cycle of harmony, disharmony, repair play out between a mother and her 11-month-old baby. If you go to watch the video, here's what you'll see. It starts with the baby sitting in a high chair facing mom, and you can see they just have this wonderful connection. The baby's pointing and cooing, and mom is looking back, and they're fully engaged, and they're smiling and responding. Then the researchers ask the mom to stop responding. So she turns away from the baby, and then she turns back with this still face, totally expressionless, completely still, no smiles, no reactions, just a stone wall.
The baby immediately, she notices this disconnect. Even at 11 months old, and even without language, she feels this disconnection, and she does everything in her power to try to repair it and to try to bring her mom back into connection with her. She smiles bigger. She points at all the things again, saying to her mom, look at this, even though she doesn't have words. She even puts her little hands up in her mom's face, like, what's going on here? And when that doesn't work, the baby gets upset, and she makes these loud screeching sounds, almost like she's asking her mom, why aren't we doing this anymore? Why aren't we playing? Why aren't we connected? And when there's still no response, the baby becomes totally resigned. She turns away from her mother, and her little body just seems to collapse under the stress of that disconnection.
Yeah, it's really sad to see this baby go through this. And then the mom just fully re-engage, and she starts interacting again. And in a matter of seconds, the baby shifts from this crying to just happy. You can watch this repair happen in real time. The connection is established, trust comes back, and they return to harmony. So this short 2-minute video is a powerful reminder of how deeply wired we are for connection and for repair.
The entire rhythm of harmony, disharmony, repair happens in all relationships, even with infants, which is interesting when you think about it, because like I said earlier, the baby doesn't even speak. The mother and the baby's interaction happens entirely without words. And I think that's because we feel ruptures on a nervous system level, and we feel it in our body when we move back into repair and when we move back into harmony. So this brings us to the third belief that I want you to consider. And that is that the most important part of this cycle isn't the harmony. The most important part of this cycle is the repair, because that is where we learn and develop everything good. It's where we learn to truly love someone who's different from us, where we develop the skills of empathy and understanding and compromise. So everything good that happens and gets developed in our relationship happens in repair. It doesn't happen in the harmony.
And the sooner that we can accept this fact, the sooner we can start moving through harmony, disharmony, repair more consciously and more deliberately. Now, there's one more faulty belief that we need to break down, and our entire society gets this wrong. Repair is not a two-way street. You do not need two people to make a repair. You really only need one.
That's right.
Guess which one?
Anyone.
Yeah.
But primarily me.
You. Yeah,
right?
primarily you, I
primarily
think.
me. The best thing that you can do when your partner is unhappy or they're dysregulated or they come to you with a grievance, the best thing you can do is to first get yourself into your best self, your higher mind, your wise mind, and then, and only then, begin to help your spouse move back into connection with you. Just like the mother guided the baby back into connection with that still face experiment, repair starts with you. That might be the most important, honestly, takeaway from today's episode, is that repair starts with you. When you feel that rupture in your body, remember, you have a choice. There's a quote that Robert and I have shared on this podcast many times.
I love that.
You want to share it?
Yeah. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In that response lies our growth and our freedom.
I love that.
So in those moments of rupture and disconnection, pause and remind yourself, this person is someone that I love. And get yourself into your wise mind and ask, what can I do right now to restore connection?
And if your spouse, I think it's also important to say that if your spouse comes to you with feedback and they are hurt or disgruntled in some way, this is not the time for a big open dialogue or a debate. It's not a time for you to air your own laundry list of grievances. It's not the moment for both of you to process all of your hurts on both sides of the equation. Instead, it is your job to help bring your partner out of disharmony and back into harmony with you by asking them, hey, what are your concerns? What do you need right now? What do you feel like would help us to correct this situation and for us to get back on track and back into harmony? There are always going to be things that you want to be different in the relationship too. And that's fine. You likely have a list of things you would like your partner to change as well. And guess what? Those things will still be here tomorrow and you can talk about those things then. But right now, today, the focus is on helping your partner feel better and move back into harmony with you.
This brings us to our fourth and final belief. Repair starts with me. Now, let's review the 4 beliefs we've covered in today's episode. Belief number 1, conflict is not only inevitable, it's actually normal and necessary and beneficial. And without conflict, we'd never develop that deep, mature love that all of us want.
Belief number 2, repairing early and often almost always leads to the very best outcomes. So remember, don't wait. Repair early, repair often, repair always.
Repair always. I like that. Belief number 3, the part of the cycle where we learn and develop everything good, love, empathy, and understanding happens during the repair. It doesn't happen in the harmony.
That's right. And belief number 4, repair starts with me. It is in my best interest and in the interest of our relationship if I help my partner move back into harmony with me. So I think that brings us to the end of this episode. And next week, we're going to dive deeper into repair. So you don't want to miss the next 2 episodes for sure, because that's where we'll be wrapping up this mini series. And we're going to be talking more about repair attempts during disagreement. And we're also going to talk about how to really apologize and apologize well. So be sure to subscribe to the show so you get that notification when these episodes drop.
And if today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really helps us to reach more people who might benefit from these insights. And of course, share this episode with anyone who you think might find it useful, because we all deserve relationships that can move skillfully through conflict and repair.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Take care of each other this week. Put each other first. It's the small things done often that make the greatest impact.
Until next time.